Welcome to Seven Figures and Beyond with your host, Greg Shuey, your e-commerce marketing expert.
Howdy, e-commerce brand builders. Welcome to episode 6 of the Seven Figures and Beyond podcast. I'm stoked to be with you today. I hope everyone enjoyed last week's episode and have started to figure out how you're going to scale up your quantitative data collection for your brand. So today we have a pretty amazing guest with us. His name is Stephen Bell, and he is with Knocommerce. That's K-N-O Commerce. I talk about them a lot. I've talked about them in probably almost every podcast that we've done. In a lot of my LinkedIn content, we talk about them in our blog content because they are the tool to use to help with customer data collection. Correct me, Stephen, if I'm wrong. You guys got your start with post-purchase surveys, but today, really, the sky is the limit with what you can collect with their platform. Is that right?
Yeah, 100% accurate.
Awesome. So if you haven't heard about them before today, or you don't use them yet, go check out their website, do a Google search. Again, that's K-N-O Commerce, Knocommerce. Go do that right now. So Stephen, would you take just a couple of minutes and introduce yourself to our listeners and share a little bit about your personal story and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me, Greg. Super excited to be here. Definitely excited to jam on this. So a little bit about me. I am relatively new in the e-commerce space. So I had a failed FBA brand at one point. And then what originally led me to Knocommerce is I now have a fitness accessories brand. And while I could do all the heavy lifting of product development, I knew nothing about e-commerce marketing. So I basically slid into the DMs of my now boss on LinkedIn and asked for a job. Since then, I now lead out all
Really? That's what you did. You just slid into Jeremiah's DMs and you got yourself a job. That is amazing.
It was Bar's DMs.
It was Bar's.
Yeah. So Bar and I, we worked at a similar company. Don't need to get it too much into it, but he worked at the parent company and I worked at a sister company, but we didn't ever overlap, but our networks did. And so I saw he was hiring and I said, I will do whatever it takes to get this job. And within about 3 weeks, I was onboarded here at Knocommerce.
That's so cool. Awesome. Why don't you just take another minute really quick and just share kind of what you're working on with your own e-commerce brand?
Yeah, so I am very heavy into the weightlifting community. And so as an Apple Watch wearer, I always got annoyed that different accessories would get in the way of my smartwatch. So starting with wrist wraps and lifting straps that fit around and protect your smartwatch when weight training is kind of the niche of fitness that I'm in today. So far has gone great and allows me to really learn the industry quite well firsthand to be able to give back to the agencies and merchants that we work with over at Knocommerce.
I love that. Some of the best marketers out there inside of agencies and for other brands, they have their own companies, right? And they're testing these things on the fly and they're learning as they go. What's the name of the company? Let's give them a shout out really quick in case we have any weightlifters listening in.
Yeah, so it's Protect Wraps. It's spelled a little uniquely, but we can put those in any show notes. But if you even Google anything around Apple Watch and weightlifting, the brand should show up at this point.
Nice. You've got your SEO dialed, it sounds like.
Not dialed, but it's definitely a work in progress.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing those things. I've put together a couple of questions to guide our conversations. Are you ready to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. All right. So the first thing that I would like to take some time discussing is, what are you working on right now inside of Know that gets you super pumped and gets you excited and jazzed and gets you up in the morning?
Ooh, yeah, great question. So, Knocommerce is the first time in my life that I will actively check Slack, probably at 5 or 6 a.m. when I'm at the gym every day. And here's why. We have the great opportunity to witness so many different unique customer insights and work with so many different brands. And now that I've been there for over 14 months, I've probably spoken to, in some context, with over 2,000 brands in the last 14 months. And we have hundreds of agency and tech partners. I think the biggest thing that gets me up right now is just really enabling brands to unlock the maximum amount of capacity of insights on autopilot. A lot of times brands will come to us and they'll ask maybe one or two questions, or maybe they've sent out a how'd you hear about a survey via email in the past. And so really taking those customers or those merchants where they're at today and understanding their strategy and like really personalizing it based on what I've seen work and not work is what's been like really, really fun and what like keeps me going day in and day out.
That's awesome. I mean, a lot of the brands that I talk to on a regular basis do no customer data collection. Like they are starting literally from zero. So I'm sure you have a bunch of those coming in, but you also have a lot who have been collecting data. And maybe they've used another tool or they've used a homegrown solution. And you just kind of add fuel to the fire.
Yeah, I mean, when I first came on board, Jeremiah, our CEO, and Bar, our VP of revenue, they would tell me that they would constantly be on calls with brands that were doing 8, 9, 10 figures and didn't know who their online customer was. And that was really hard for me to like believe. I thought it was almost like a marketing, like kind of get me hyped to like talk to these brands. But when you talk to the heads of growth, when you talk to the VP of marketing at some of these really large household brands, a lot of them really do not know their customer, especially that online customer. And so that is where even suggesting different simple tactics has been, not to overuse the term game changer, but more or less it has been for a lot of the brands and like the executive teams that we worked with.
Yeah. I was actually talking to the founder of an 8-figure brand last week, and I asked who is your customer, and the response was I am. Like that's how I built the company. And I just have to giggle and slap my head and just feel kind of sad for him, because oftentimes the customer has changed as the business has evolved, as it's grown and scaled. And so it's just so critical to be able to capture that information.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. All right. So my next question is kind of a double question, I would say. And I'm hoping that we can really spend a lot of our time here today unpacking these together. So as you guys have grown and scaled over the last couple of years, you've got a lot of brands that have already been using the platform to collect mass amounts of data. They've been on it forever. Some of them have been on it from the very, very beginning. So two of the questions that I hear a lot from brands are, one, how do you take your data collection to the next level? Because a lot of them are just basically using post-purchase surveys. Like, what's the next step for them to start to scale that up? And then the second one is, how do you evolve your insights as time goes on?
Yeah, so definitely can help shed a lot of light on this for anyone that's listening that's either entertaining a post-purchase survey or is currently using one, whether Knocommerce or some of the other ones on Shopify today. I mean, as far as like, how do you take your data collection to the next level? So for those that are unfamiliar or are not using a post-purchase survey today, the main reason why brands still come to Knocommerce on a daily basis is for attribution. So, and a lot of that is around the typical how'd you hear about us question that we've all seen across so many different platforms. I know that they're on little toast checkouts at restaurants now. It's a very relevant question to like any kind of business. So that is why people come to us. And so when brands first come to us, usually that's all they're trying to figure out at first. How'd you hear about us? Now, we have a little bit different of a take on attribution than that singular question. We actually think attribution is a 3-question approach. So that way we can help you better map out your customer journey. So we do try to break up the initial discovery channel with the question, how did you first hear about us? And then go into what brought you to our site today? And then how long did you know about us before making that first purchase? Just to be able to better map out that whole customer journey. But where brands come to us and they're like, okay, great, I'm mainly advertising on Meta. I do a little bit of Google, and then some of our more mature brands, yes, that it can incorporate TikTok, podcasts, all sorts of different elements. Where we usually help evolve is starting to go more into the where on the platform. So a lot of people first come to us on what platform is it? And then as they evolve, it's where on that platform, because we can go down that journey with that customer and follow up. Hey, great, you came from Instagram. Where did you, like, who posted about us? Was it an influencer? Was it an ad? And on our higher plans, if it was an ad, we could show it's manual, but you can upload any ad creative that you're really trying to confirm. If it's an influencer, we can follow up and uncover who is the name of that person. If it's an organic mention, you have an option to put in the handle. And so even on the attribution piece, that's where we will typically help evolve into as like an initial V2. So I'll stop there before going into anything further. Any follow-up questions from that initial blurb, if you will?
I don't think so. We've recently started doing this for a number of clients. I mean, in the past, we just, used the basic free plan and just asked those 3 questions. Going deeper has just opened up a whole another level of insights on the clients that we've been doing this for. We haven't done the uploading of ad creative and ad copy. I think that's pretty awesome. Do you have a general sense of, how many of your customers are actually doing that right now? Is it a pretty decent percentage?
It's not a pretty decent percentage. I use it firsthand for my brand, more for product development. Like, hey, are you interested in a variation or an update to this kind of product or this kind of product? But yeah, I mean, once again, we only released it a few months ago, so there's still some education that surrounds like making sure that we use it. But that's kind of like where we're at today with like that question type in particular.
That's awesome. A couple of other questions that I have are, we've been taught over and over and over again that the more information you request from people, the fewer who are actually going to take the time to actually fill it out and complete it. Do you find that you start to see a drop-off in people taking the complete survey as you add in more of those options?
Yeah, great question. And it was something that I was going to make sure to hit on just in case people were unfamiliar. So many of the brands that first come to us, they think that way, right? Because and here's why. So for a little bit of education, a lot of forms today, like a Google form or type form or whatever, they're an all or nothing data capture. And so it almost conditions the marketer to ask the least amount of questions. Same thing goes for a pop-up form, right? You want to have the least amount of fields as possible. Well, with Knocommerce, if they answer 2-3 questions and drop off, we will collect all the data up into that point. And so usually what we see is about a 45% response rate. So let me break that down for the listeners. That's how many people answer that first question. So more or less, 1 out of every 2 of your customers are going to answer at least the first question. And then there's about an 80 to 85% completion rate for a 6 to 8 question survey. And so a lot of that comes down to the personalization of the survey. And so for people that are worried about it affecting the customer experience is one thing that I've heard. It's, well, if that's your biggest concern, how can we incorporate our logic capabilities and our customer journey capabilities to be able to ask questions based on the answers that the customers are electing? Once something feels more personalized, then it's a lot easier to respond to. And so that's where we've seen some of the brands that do this really well get away with asking 15 plus questions in a post-purchase survey with zero incentive and still having like a 70% completion rate.
That's wild.
Yeah,
absolutely wild. All right. The last kind of sub question I have before we move on to the last part of that initial question is, outside of post-purchase surveys, which I think is probably, just guessing, 99% of the people come to you for that. What are some of the other survey types that you're seeing more and more customers adopt to be able to collect more data on their customers?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this will tie well into kind of the second question that I know will evolve into. But we also have the capabilities to email out surveys as links, right? And for any of those that are unfamiliar, so while we are post-purchase surveys, we can segment based off of a bunch of attributes in the order ID. And so that is where I will tease out a little bit, but we can do new versus returning, or if there's a particular product launch and we want to grab that product ID from, let's say, Shopify and trigger a survey just to people that bought that product. Those are other use cases that I'll talk about in just a little bit. But with the email out survey as a link, or we can take that script and some people will inject it if it's a high AOV product as something like a warranty registration form, just so that way you can then utilize the Knocommerce reporting to cross-examine and pivot table all the data against each other to really get some unique insights, whether it's warranty registration, attribution, product development, so on and so forth. So we can have the ability to create a one-time promo code if you are using Shopify. And so that's where for abandoned cart emailed out surveys as a link that are basically a CTA disguised as a survey, or something like a quarterly or yearly voice of customer survey where you ask 20, 30 plus questions and have an incentive at the end. All those different things are what we've seen. And we had one CPG brand that tested it and didn't really believe us at first that we're going to actually help get any responses. And they were like, okay, we'll create a 25% off code, whatever. And they actually sold through all of their online inventory and did like 90K of sales just based off the promo codes from like our surveys.
Whoa, that is impressive.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's unpack that second question that I had. So how do you evolve your insights from the platform as time goes on?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite questions because a lot of times when I'm talking to some people that have just been in the game for a long, long time, and I'm like, sometimes it's easy to hop on these calls and be like, you're like an OG in e-com. How am I going to help you? But they like don't know how to get to that second, third, or fourth level of insights. And so while the framework is different for every brand we work with, and our team is extremely hands-on as far as consultation, strategy, based on this answer, maybe we go here. This is usually what I see happen the most, depending on like the industry. But if you take the most common industries like fashion and beauty and food, we can use those as kind of the illustration today. So brands initially will come to us for attribution. But what happens is usually there's certain channels that stick out like a sore thumb, namely Meta, if it's a baby brand, or a really hot and popular influencer-led brand, word of mouth, are usually the two that stick out like a sore thumb. Search and TikTok can play into the mix there.
Yeah.
But where we really evolve into is understanding who that customer is, right? So a lot of people do what platform, and then we can help them get where on the platform. And then we're starting to really dive deep into unlocking your online persona. And so that is where it's very quality heavy questions. So what qualities do you look for when shopping for a skincare brand? What interested you the most when shopping with us? CRO, especially for high return brands like clothing or businesses like clothing. How confident are you that the clothing you pick today will fit you as you'd like? And so that is where we can really work closely with the team to unlock. Usually it's attribution, to recap. Then it goes into like product development. And then it can go into CRO. And then it can go into retention because we can tag anything in Klaviyo. And like the fifth level of evolution is like taste, styles, and preferences. So what kind of content do you digest? Where do you spend time online? Who are your biggest fashion influences? What makeup style, like what makeup artists do you follow online? All these different kind of style, people, household income kind of questions to really help shape up like who this customer really is. And then trends will start emerging from that.
Dang. Just dang. I had no idea, honestly. that your platform could do all of that. That's pretty fantastic. What are the characteristics of a brand for you to say you could benefit from this type of additional insights or analysis? Like, can anyone, or are you looking at like 8, 9-figure brands to do more of that heavy customization, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I would say anyone. However, I think the ones that get the most out of it have the most orders, therefore the most data, right?
Yeah.
But like mom and pop brands that come to us that are doing 50, 100, 200, 300 orders a month, where they can really benefit from us is they don't really need to know where on the platform someone's hearing about the brand, right? They're probably advertising on Meta and maybe have a few influencers and paid search in the mix, depending on the industry.
Yeah.
And so usually for small mom and pop brands, download our free plan. It's 3 questions. You can ask, how'd you first hear about us? You can ask, what interested you the most about your brand today? Make that a single choice question, so then you can really have a definitive answer as to your main value prop or main value driver. And then if you're thinking about product development, or maybe you're something that there's a lot of color variants or designs, hey, what colors, designs, products, etc. would you like to see from us in the future? So how can you use us as a free medium to automate your customer insights to help you position yourselves to actually grow to a 7-figure brand one day? But then brands that are 8, 9 figures, there's so much that we can do. The amount of surveys that a lot of these brands have at this point in their account that they're just constantly slicing and dicing and exporting and cross-referencing is pretty unique and like fun to watch. But all to say, I think any brand can really benefit from us, and some of them can benefit without even paying us a buck if you're a small brand.
Sure. One question that I've had that we've never discussed before is, for some of these larger brands, like, do you have consulting retainers where you work directly with them, or do they buy the tool and they're kind of on their own and they can ask you some questions here or there? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've had to think long and hard about this, because we've actually had like a lot of brands push us into what you'd call the enterprise level. But how it works is, if you are on our highest self-service plan, which is $299 a month, our pro plan, if you're looking at our website ever, that one will get you a Slack channel and we'll answer any of your questions directly in Slack. If you're on our enterprise package, you'll get a monthly consulting call with us. However, even though we have those parameters, if you pay for any of our plans, so even our 1 survey, $119 a month plan, we'll still properly onboard you. I'll still talk to you and share what I've learned from talking with 2,000 brands. And so, to your comment that you made a few minutes ago, the reason why you probably didn't know that we can do all these different things is like a lot of it comes down to the strategy. And I think we've just all seen a lot at this point in the last year worth of growth, that it's like, how can we then share that and pay it forward to like the brands that we work with?
Yeah, I like that. So we both kind of talked about this just a little bit. Like, you've had brands that have been with you forever. I mean, how long have you guys been around? Is it 3 or 4 years?
3.5 years. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. So you've had brands who've been on the platform for 3.5 years, but also you have some monster brands on the platform. I mean, I did a LinkedIn post about this the other day. I just made my very first order with True Classic, bought myself some jeans, and I saw your survey on their thank you page, which was just awesome. I always get a smile on my face when I see that. So you've got brands that have years and years and years of data. You also have brands that just have tons and tons and tons of data in a 30-day window. Like, how do you recommend brands kind of sift through that data? Like, do you look at it in specific windows of time? Do you say 3.5 years, combined? Is that too long to look at data in aggregate, like this type of data? How do you recommend doing that?
I don't know if there's any definitive recommendation, because what we usually recommend is let at least 1,000 responses go to a particular selection. But then sometimes the brands we work with come with us like a bat out of hell almost, and they have so many ideas that the second they see one answer get a good enough lead on all the other answers, they move on to the next questions they want to ask their customers. So while there's no perfect one, if we take your example of someone that's been with us for 3.5 years, I mean, we've also evolved the platform a lot. So 3.5 years ago, if you used us, we were actually a tool called No Attribution versus Knocommerce. And it was like a 1-question survey that you could ask. Now you can ask unlimited questions on any of our paid plans. And so there's a bunch that we can dive into, but to stay on topic, I mean, where a lot of these brands will use us is sometimes out of the gate, it's every 4 to 6 weeks that they'll change the survey, especially if they're doing a few thousand orders per month. And then what it always kind of comes back to is just that extra piece of confirmation on the attribution puzzle. So no matter how far people stray as to what questions they ask, they always come back to, how'd you first hear about us? What brought you to our site today? And how long did you know about us before making that first purchase? And then they just let that rip, because as that brand is growing, they're likely going to be testing more channels. And so therefore, yeah, maybe they already know that Meta is their biggest driver and that their ROAS is actually better when you use PPS data than in platform or whatever. But then when you bring on a new platforms like TV, or you're flirting with the idea of advertising on Pinterest again or whatever, that's where like those questions will always be very foundational within how we provide value to our merchants.
Gotcha. Cool. I mean, I usually lean towards like a 30 to 45 day window of like data blocks that I specifically look at. It sounds like a lot of your big guys are changing things up on a regular basis. So they look at those segments of data kind of from when they launch to when they change things up. So, okay, cool. That's awesome. You guys obviously are doing something right, because I have seen a number of other competitors kind of pop up over the last year or so, which is awesome. But at the same time, it puts a little bit of pressure on you guys. So what do you think, the future of Knocommerce holds? And what do you think the future of like post-purchase surveys and just data collection in general holds?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, we've all seen like the emergence of different platforms. Like, to be clear, we were not the first post-purchase survey platform to be created. However, we are now the most downloaded PPS platform on Shopify. So
nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I wish Jeremiah got me a cupcake when we made that milestone, but still waiting on that.
Okay, when did that happen?
My memory's hazy on this. I mean, I saw it in our Slack, and then I was stoked because, like anybody, I'm competitive. I don't think that's a unique characteristic, but I think when you're in e-commerce, you're probably pretty competitive. But so it happened either a few weeks or a few months ago. I honestly do not recall.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thanks.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, where the future of Knocommerce is, I can speak to this, then I'll speak to my personal thoughts on where PPS might be going, is your customers or your brands, if you're an agency owner, their customers are not just shopping on that site, right? And even though we can get you a pretty impressive 45% response rate, we're now trying to figure out how to give brands the rest of that 55% response rate of customers that didn't answer your surveys. And so we are in beta of a new product called Automated Insights. More or less what this product does, it's a list of 15 questions that will be presented to any customer that shops your website and has already qualified or ignored any of your existing surveys. The list of 15 questions are questions like, are you a spender or saver? What type of products do you like to buy? Where do you spend time online? so on and so forth. And then one of my favorite questions is like, what qualities do you like most when buying products like this one or something along that line? And so you can see if your customers prefer bulk packaging or like all sorts of different variants there. And then the last question of the survey is, are you open to sharing this data anonymously with our network? And so right now we're able to help we have several brands that, I mean, collectively we're doing over $1 billion worth of survey responses right now.
Wow.
And so we're getting your brand compared to the rest of the benchmark with the eventual goal of finding a way to get survey response data from somebody that shopped on another site anonymously within your account, so you can learn through a viral network of data. So that's where we're headed.
Cool.
And Jeremiah is the brainchild of that. And we're just here to support that.
Very cool. Awesome. Great. And then share some of your personal thoughts on post-purchase surveys, if you
will. I mean, I think post-purchase surveys are just going to become as familiar as something like Route is on the order confirmation screen. It is definitely in its heyday, and it's not perfect. We're not here to say that it's perfect. But it is just, I mean, to be able to talk to your customers at a 45% clip every single day is a benefit of modern society to really help drive your business forward. So I'm very bullish on it, bullish and biased, sure. But I think that like brands are going to start really leaning into what insights they can get, and they'll start rewiring the survey process. Like SurveyMonkey is great and all these forms are great, but they historically have a low response rate. But as we condition, as we deliver on a higher response and completion rate, I think that's where brands will really see that we can help the performance team, we can help the retention team, we can help the C-level team, and like really be able to build out a suite of products that like help each part of like the marketing mix within any brand.
Cool. Very cool. You mentioned SurveyMonkey. We use SurveyMonkey for a lot of data collection for our clients. Like we go back and we do demographic surveys, and we'll even go back and ask some of the same questions that we ask in those post-purchase surveys to previous customers. Do you have any brands that use your platform to go back and try to email and collect data like that?
Yeah. We do, and the main reason why is with the SurveyMonkey or Typeform, you're getting responses, but with us, we're also getting you revenue and reporting. So like you have one R in SurveyMonkey, right? You get the response, but with us, because we have like good, strong reporting as well as like all the revenue data tied back to the responses, that's where we've been extremely powerful for like a lot of e-commerce brands where they're trying to make not only a decision or an action from the data, but they're also trying to make a profitable decision based on like the answers they're seeing within like their like customer insights.
That's awesome. Cool. All right. Do you have any final parting words of wisdom for our listeners today?
No parting words per se, but yeah, I mean, like we're here to help. And I mean, I think like the level of education our team tries to provide is definitely something that we're willing to share. So always feel free to reach out, and more than happy to answer any other questions.
That's awesome. And again, if you're not using them, if you've thought about it and haven't pulled the trigger, go get it done today. It literally takes, 5 minutes, one-click install with Shopify. Is that right?
Yeah, one-click install. We have templates, so we can get you live in 2 minutes probably.
2. Even faster than I thought. It's amazing.
I mean, it's silly.
It's silly. Well, thanks so much, Stephen. You've dropped some serious knowledge on us today. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that you're traveling tomorrow, so please do so safely.
Will do.
And that's a wrap for this week. So for next week, as I mentioned last week, in our next episode, we're going to be bringing in one of the founders of Phone Soap. Is Phone Soap using you guys yet?
I'm not sure if they are, but I'm familiar with the brand.
Awesome. Well, if you don't know who they are, go Google them. They're a really awesome Utah brand. They're based out of Provo. They were on Shark Tank, which makes them even cooler. And Dan, one of the founders, is a really good friend of mine. So in that episode, we're going to be talking about how Phone Soap has had to overcome some pretty big challenges coming out of COVID. A lot of people were really health conscious, really concerned about germs. And so, their device is a UV sanitization that you throw your phone in and it cleans it off. And they've had to change up their marketing and their customer acquisition approach. So he's going to share a lot of really cool information with us. And I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of brands that hit huge roadblocks and don't really know where to go or how to pivot or evolve. So I'm really excited for that episode. Make sure that you tune in. So as always, take what you've learned here, make a plan, and take massive action this year. So until next time, this is Greg Shuey and Stephen Bell signing off.